is up, and welcome to this special midweek edition of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. I was going to take the week off, but then something interesting happened. I like talking about sports, so here I am, and I couldn't cover this subject without a real expert, and so that's why I'm pleased to say I'm joined by this guy. I make him talk about all kinds of sports and topics, Mr. Brett Gosnell. Brett, thank you again for playing the role of expert for me today.
Thanks for having me.
So the thing we have to talk about is that the United States soccer team made a coaching hire finally. We've been waiting on this news for 6 months. And the news is that they're just bringing back the old guy, Gregg Berhalter. So what makes this news so shocking, in your opinion?
So, two reasons. One, the situation that U.S. soccer is in, and two, Gregg's past performance. So, one, the U.S. is about to host the World Cup in 2026, as we all know. Just a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, amazing opportunity to grow the game, our best chance to win it. We're hosting the Copa America in 2024, which is another massive tournament. All the South American teams, the Brazils, Argentinas, are going to come up to the U.S. to play. And thankfully for all these great opportunities, we have our best generation of players ever. No question about it. The most talent U.S. soccer has ever had by far. So it's just an amazing time to be a U.S. soccer fan. It's just an amazing time for the program, the country. And it would seem like if there's ever a time to attract one of the premier coaches in the world, it would be right now. You get an extremely talented roster and you get to host two major tournaments. So that's one reason it's weird that we've went back to Gregg. And then looking at Gregg specifically, his performance. So if you look at just his win-loss record over his tenure, he is one of the best U.S. coaches ever, maybe the best. However, like I said, he's had to whom much is given, much is tested, right? So I think that was a Kanye or a Jay-Z line. To whom much is given, much is required, I think is what that – I think they had to say tested to rhyme.
Both great quotes.
Okay. So to whom much is given, much is required. So he has the most talented roster ever, and it's a little mildly disappointing what he accomplished with it, in my opinion. We looked terrible in World Cup qualifying for much of it. We did qualify, however. And then at the World Cup, we scored 3 goals in 4 games. Now, I'm going to go into a little more detail later when I defend Gregg. It's not as bad as it looked on the surface, but we get through the group stage barely, very lucky to get past Iran. And then we get smoked by the Netherlands. So a par for the course U.S. performance at a World Cup at best. So he's not really covered himself in glory in his past performance. And like I say, the situation would dictate us getting a premier coach, and yet we end up with Gregg Berhalter.
And speaking of that World Cup performance, and everyone who knows me knows my love of offense, and looking at our team as a casual fan, it gave me, as a Gamecocks fan, flashbacks to Will Muschamp. How it's almost like we refused to score. And that didn't really get me hyped up heading into any other of these soccer events. How much of that is on Gregg as far as strategy? How much of it is on Gregg as far as the players he decided to bring or leave home? How much of that is on Gregg as far as the players he decided to play versus not play?
So talk about Gregg generally with the strategy real quick. He's known as a tinkerer and an overthinker when it comes to coaching. So in international soccer, you don't have a lot of time with these players. You know, they have their professional club teams they play for. They get 2-week breaks throughout the season to come join their national team and play together. So you can't really implement that high level of stuff. You've got to play a simple brand of soccer. You just don't have time to learn anything else. Gregg does not seem to understand that. So a lot of our poor performance in qualifying that I mentioned, perhaps a lot of our scoring inability, you could argue has to do with he just doesn't coach the team the correct way. He has a lot of talent. He should just let him play. One of the best quotes I ever heard was from a YouTube commenter at one of our World Cup qualifying games where we looked terrible. Gregg had just run out a bizarre lineup that made no sense, was just overthought to the max. And a YouTube commenter said, Gregg's out here playing chess. Unfortunately, this is a checkers tournament. So, I mean, that's what he does. So now getting into particularly the lack of scoring. So he's got talent. I mean, we lacked a striker at the last World Cup. We didn't have a clear striker, and that is who scores the goals. So that's a fair. And we have that guy now, Folarin Balogun, recently committed to play for the U.S. So the next World Cup, we will have a good striker. But, I mean, he's still got Christian Pulisic. He's still got, an excellent midfield. He's still got Jedi Robinson and Serginho Dest on the wings, Timo Weah. He's got a ton of talent. And the fact that we only scored 3 times in 4 games, that – I mean, Gregg's not the one who actually puts it in the net, but that still has to be an indictment on him. So, I don't know how much I blame the lack of goals necessarily, but the overall, the lack of goals over the course of a year and a half, like including qualifying and the World Cup, I do think you can put on Gregg. And then let me finish up by saying you did make a good point. The lack of not playing the right players. Gio Reyna, which that's a whole controversy I'm sure we'll get in. But not playing him at the World Cup is very strange because that is a guy that can help put the ball in the back of the net. As we've seen, he had 2 assists in the Nations League final against Canada. So he can help do that.
Let's talk about that now because that was just incredible. I'll link the video that I did on the whole situation in the show notes. But Gio Reyna shows up, apparently was acting kind of immature. I guess he wanted more playing time or to start. Didn't happen. So he was just kind of half-assing it when they were practicing and whatever. After the World Cup, Gregg is at a leadership conference. He thinks he's speaking off the record, kind of covers the Gio Reyna situation about how he almost sent Gio home in the middle of the World Cup, which would have been crazy. And it leaks that he's talking about it. The Reyna family is pissed. Gio's dad, former national team member. Then Gregg released a statement apologizing for kicking his now wife, then girlfriend, 30 years ago during an argument. Comes out, someone was blackmailing him, trying to blackmail him through the U.S. Soccer Federation, saying, if you bring this guy back, we're going to leak that this incident happened in 1991 or whatever. Who leaked? Who was doing the blackmailing? The Reyna family, who were before this, I'm guessing not anymore, but best friends with the Berhalter family before this happened. I swear to God, if this had been like football or basketball, more major sport, everyone would still be talking about it because it was just the most ridiculous scandal I'd ever heard of. Do you think they're able to move past this with Gio, who is one of the most talented players we have? And first of all, what are your thoughts on all of that? Secondly, how hard do you think it's going to be to move past that?
One of the strangest sports scandals I've ever heard, no question about it. And it's very emblematic of a problem that U.S. soccer has, in that we're too insular. Like, the soccer community is just too small because think about this. These two families are best friends. The wives, Berhalter's wife and Reyna's wife, who actually did the leaking, from what I understand, it was Gio's mom that was really driving the thing. They were teammates at North Carolina on the soccer team. And then the fathers obviously, played soccer together their whole lives. And now the son is being coached by Berhalter. It's so weird. It's like a small town thing almost, but yeah, just bizarre. I mean, it's just Christian Pulisic always refers to it as a youth soccer type thing, like we're complaining about playing time, and that's exactly what it is. And I don't. It's just bizarre. But what I will say, I don't think it. I'm optimistic that it won't be a problem going forward, because Gio Reyna is one of our best players. So it behooves Gregg Berhalter to play him to save his own job. And then when Gio's on the field, he's going to want to do good. It's good for himself to do good. So the incentives are there for them, at least them two, the coach and the player, to squash this and move on. So I don't see it being a problem. Now, the two families will never be friends again, I imagine, but I don't, that's not my business.
It does remind me of my time working in youth soccer, where I worked in youth sports, and every sport has miserable parents. Like, the saying is, the problem with youth sports is adults. Yeah. But youth soccer, those parents rose to a level that was just, I'd never seen anything like it. And this is South Carolina. It's not like you think of South Carolina as this huge soccer hotbed. Yeah. And they just swear like their 9-year-old is next, and you're in the way of that happening. And it did remind me of that situation. Like, it was a very American soccer situation. To see that happen, I was just like, man, this is fantastic. Because it felt like as the leaks were coming out, then they would reveal like how close the Reynas and the Berhalters were with each. Like, oh, actually, they were best men at each other's wedding and this, that, and the other. And I just couldn't get enough of it, especially since it appears that Gregg hasn't done any domestic violence type stuff since. And it was 30 years ago. His wife married him. Here we are. But to do that for a national team in the United States of America, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And I guess kind of going along with that, how much of the U.S. Soccer Federation's decision to bring Gregg back was, well, we don't want to give any appearance that you can blackmail us into picking a new head coach?
So I can't think that really played into the decision, but maybe subconsciously or something. But as much as I wanted Berhalter gone, I am glad that kind of behavior didn't win. Like, that's just such a shit thing for the Reynas to try to pull off. So it's good that behavior wasn't rewarded. As much as I actually kind of did want it to be rewarded, because I didn't want Berhalter back. But, I kind of thought if this controversy played any impact, it would have been the other way. They would have said, I know it's really not that big of a deal, but let's just wash our hands of this situation. He's not that good of a coach anyway. Why put up with any controversy whatsoever? Let's just get rid of Berhalter. That's the way I thought it would have worked out if it impacted things at all.
Yeah, and kind of just it's so stupid when you think about it that you're using this to blackmail a guy into not being the coach of your son, but you already knew about this and you had him in your wedding and you hung out with his family all the time and you were just kind of sitting on this until it could benefit you. Like, this isn't Succession or whatever like that. They're just so stupid. And so I think we just played Canada, and
yeah.
didn't Gio have like an
2
incredible
assists?
game?
He only played the first half too. He got hurt at the end of the first half, and so yeah, had 2 assists. Just incredible performance. And getting into the details a little bit, he was playing in central midfield. He was playing the center attacking mid position, which Gregg never, ever let him play. It's probably his best position, and Gregg always stuck him out on the wing, which that's kind of something you do when you want a stronger, more defensively sound midfield. You would put the guy that would normally be your point guard type of guy on the wing instead and have more defensively sound people in the middle. The interim coach, BJ Callahan, who won this tournament for us, he put Gio at what would seem to be his best position, and that's the position where you can really get those assists. You can really make the good passes into the box, and Gio certainly did that. He looked amazing.
So where did this BJ Callahan fall in the coaching search? I mean, I don't know if you know, but it sounds like he's doing better with the players that Gregg had access to than Gregg did.
Yeah, probably because he's just doing less, you know. I can't imagine he was like ever considered. He just doesn't have a lot of big time experience. But I'm glad you brought that up. So more and more details have come to light about the coaching search. So apparently, on its face, it seems that we did attempt to go after, at least at one point, we did try to go get some of the best managers in the world. At least they want us to think that. In January, Zinedine Zidane turned the job down, which I would say, aside from like Pep Guardiola at Man City, he's probably the number one most highly thought of coach in the world. He hasn't coached a long time, but he's won the Champions League at Real Madrid like every single year of his career, I think. I mean, he's just amazing.
Another very public act of violence there with the headbutt.
Yeah. So, yeah, that guy that did that actually turned out to be a brilliant manager. So, yeah, he turned the job down, and then what they're saying is they interviewed 10-plus candidates from all over the world. There's France, Germany. They listed the countries that they were from, but they didn't say who the people were. But a wide array of candidates from a wide array of places. They hired a search firm and all of that, and still somehow we end up with Berhalter. There's speculation that it was budget constraints. I have no way to know whether that's true or not.
Do you know how many of those people we went after turned us down versus we looked at them and we were like, they're not the right one for the job?
No. I have no idea. Don't know who they are. A few of them, Jesse Marsh is a guy that we knew was in the running, and he would, if offered the job, he would have taken it. And Patrick Vieira is another guy that we knew. But getting into that, just looking at the guys that we know who were offered the job, those two, and Zidane would have been great, but he turned us down. Nothing we can do. Patrick Vieira and Jesse Marsh, I don't know that they're better options than Berhalter, to be honest. At one point, I was chomping at the bit for Jesse Marsh, but he's failed at his last multiple jobs in a row. Leeds fired him this year. They couldn't score. I mean, you talk about a team not scoring. Leeds couldn't score to save their lives. I blame that on their striker more than I do Marsh, but it is what it is. And then Patrick Vieira, he got fired at Crystal Palace this year. So, I don't know how much better options those guys that would have definitely accepted the job if offered it. I don't know that they're better than Berhalter.
And we've talked about the job that Berhalter has done. And you mentioned he's probably the best manager that we've had at the national level up to this point. What's the typical coaching cycle look like in soccer, particularly for the elite soccer nations, which I'm guessing we're trying to be like?
So that's really good to bring that up. It's exceedingly rare for a coach to last beyond one World Cup cycle. Even if that team wins the World Cup, it's still 4 years is an eternity in soccer. The coach it's just so rare that they last longer. And with club teams, it's even shorter a lot of times. Just for whatever reason, that's the culture in soccer. They really value bringing in a new coach to have a new voice, change things up, motivate the players again. And apparently it doesn't take a lot of time to install a system on the front end. So the turnover is very frequent in soccer. So, yeah, with the World Cup being every 4 years, national team coaches typically just get one cycle and they're done. The current exception that's happening right now is the France coach, but he won the World Cup the first time, his first cycle. You got to bring him back when he wins it. And then he lost in the finals in the best game ever played in any sport against Argentina. So he's still there. That's the kind of thing it usually takes to make an exception, and for some reason we're making an exception with a guy that miraculously got out of a moderately difficult but not overly difficult group and then got smoked by the Netherlands.
So is there enough time if we see next year or whatever that this really was the wrong move to get rid of Gregg and come back with someone else and still have a shot heading into the World Cup?
So, yeah. Now, I just learned today that when it was first announced that we were bringing Gregg back, there wasn't any details on how long the contract was. So those of us that don't like him, we're hoping, well, maybe it's just a 1-year contract or something. No, it's through the next World Cup. But that don't mean we can't fire him. That just means we'll have to pay a bigger buyout, which if these budget constraints that I mentioned earlier are true, that would hurt. But, we will have, like I said, the Copa Americas next year. We will have a major tournament that Gregg will coach. That'll be another opportunity for him to prove himself. If we fail spectacularly there, surely we move on. I would hope. Because, like I said, the hosting the World Cup is just such an incredible opportunity. When these budget constraint rumors started, I started thinking maybe, this is probably me just hoping against hope, but I started thinking maybe if we don't have the money to hire one of the best coaches in the world now and pay him every year throughout the next World Cup, maybe we can hire him the year before the World Cup. It might be more attractive to them because they'll say, oh, I just get to walk in and coach a World Cup team. I don't have to do any build up. And then it would be, shorter time we're on the hook for a bigger contract. So maybe that'll end up happening if we fail at the Copa America next year, maybe in 2025, then we bring in a Pep Guardiola or somebody whose contract at Man City will be running out at that exact time. So yeah, I mean that does remain a possibility, even though it does seem that U.S. is committed to him for the next World Cup.
So we're a ways out from the World Cup, but what are your expectations heading into it? Like, what would be a good World Cup result for us in 2026?
I mean, when you're hosting the World Cup, it's such a huge, it's a huge boost. And we are going to have, like I said, our most talented lineup of players ever. The one position we were weak at the last World Cup, we've got addressed with an elite player in Florin Balogun. All these players are going to be that much more experienced. They're all still going to be within their prime. I mean, anything less than like a Final Four appearance, I would be disappointed. I think that's fair to ask.
Well, we've kind of shit on Gregg a little bit, but what about him could get us to the Final Four in 2026?
So it seems that he's built like a good culture. The players, most of the players seem to like him a lot. A lot of the players were, doing interviews after the World Cup, defending him and saying they wanted him back. Pulisic was very vocal about wanting him back. He's a good recruiter of talent. So it's not like college football where you recruit every player, but there is an element with these dual nationals, and we have several, where you are trying to convince them to play for your country over, whatever other country they're eligible for. Berhalter is responsible for bringing in Serginho Dest, who is our starting right back. Balogun, who I keep bringing up, the striker, he actually committed to us while Gregg was absent, but most people still give Gregg the credit for that, for laying the groundwork. So he does have a good reputation of, recruiting good talent. And as much as I criticize his coaching style, his on the field stuff, at the last World Cup, I was actually very impressed with how he played. So, as I've said many times, we only scored 3 goals in 4 games. On its face, that looks bad. It looks Will Muschampy, as you put it. But if you actually watched every game, and there's advanced statistics that back this up too, we actually were one of the most aggressive teams at the World Cup. It's almost bad luck that the goals didn't come, it would seem. Or maybe it was just simply lack of a final elite player to put the ball in the back of the net, which we have now. But the rest of the team played aggressive. We were in the other team's half most of the time. We played a very brave, attractive, beautiful style of soccer. And I mean, Berhalter deserves credit for that. Normally, in years past, a team like the U.S., we would be under-talented. We'd go to the World Cup and we would play very, very defensively, just try not to give up a goal, and then hope to get something on the counter because we just don't have enough talent to play these teams straight up. We did not do that this last World Cup, and it didn't end up working out for us, but I appreciate that. And I would rather go down swinging and trying to take the fight to the other team, especially when we have the talent that we have. So I give Gregg a lot of credit for that, for sure.
And that feels like an American way to play too, like aggressive, trying to score, taking the fight to you. I think personally, if soccer is really going to take off in this country, I think it has to be that playing style versus a more defensive one, just because the way our school systems are, we can only understand so much of the soccer tactics outside of ball in goal is good. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you look at the England game, it was a 0-0 draw. So that was a big disappointment. But England is one of top 3 to 5 most talented teams in the world, and we were better than them. Like, we played them straight up. We did not play defensively. We didn't give them any respect. We went out there and we just bossed that game. So, at the end of the day, it's a 0-0 draw in the group stage. It didn't mean anything really, but I don't know. That felt like a watershed moment for U.S. soccer to me, how good we looked that game.
Yeah, so hopefully we look more like that with a little bit more of the ball in the back of the net with our dear friend Gregg. Man, do we leave anything out?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's the most comprehensive U.S. soccer coverage you will get. So you're welcome. And we'll be coming at you soon with a Women's World Cup preview as well. That's going to be exciting. We should win that one, I'm guessing. And we've won it before, so get your soccer fix there. We do put the ball in the net on that side of things. But This has been another episode of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. Like I said, midweek episode. I will come at you again Monday at the regular time slot. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review, and share. And again, I'll catch y'all Monday.